Now we're going to move on a little bit, and I want to get into more specific supports for each of the subsections. And obviously there's 2 on the test. Can you share with me what's the best low-hanging fruit advice that you can offer students for the math section?
For math, one thing that I think is crucially important is to think about that easy to hard spread, that these questions go from easy to hard. And it's not that someone at that made the SAT just looked at the questions like, that one feels hard, let's put it towards the end. They try these questions out on students, and they do statistics of what percentage is getting it right to order the questions in the section. What that means is the first question, statistically, a lot of students are getting it right. So if you do that question and you get an answer and you're like, it's 9, and then 9 is there, bubble in 9, you can feel good about it. If you get to the last question of the section, the hardest one, and you see it and you're like, well, that's easy. The answer is clearly 10, and 10 is there. And I would pause before you go and bubble in 10, because the majority of students, probably 90% of students, are not getting that question right. So whatever the obvious way is of thinking of it, it's probably not working. It's probably a question that really you have to double your efforts at thinking through it more cleverly, and thinking like, oh, is there something trickier than I believe going on here? So allow where the question falls within the section to adjust the way that you approach the question. And the other thing is, I would really get comfortable with the strategy of plugging in numbers, which is on this course. You will find it available. And it's a very test-specific strategy in which you take algebra, which uses a variable, and instead switch it to arithmetic. You've assigned a value to x. And so you work through the problem treating x as 5, and then you use that to plug into the answer choices to match with the answer that you got using arithmetic. It can take some really hard problems and make them really easy. And you can do it anytime you see a variable in the answer choice of a multiple choice question.
Thank you so much. I don't know much about math, but I know the kids do, and I'm sure you explained it well for them. All right, so now I'd like to shift to evidence-based reading and writing. Can you, for our next 2 questions, is there any specific tip that's helpful for the writing section specifically that you can offer to our students?
Yeah, there's one major one. The SAT wants you to pick the option that is grammatically correct, but that is also the most concise as possible. And put those 2 together, and what it means is the correct answer on a grammar question is the one that is grammatically correct and shortest. So if you're down to 2, don't start with this rule. Don't just put the short one, because there are some questions in which that is not the right answer because it doesn't work best for the sentence. So start by thinking about, what grammar rule is being tested, and then try to find out which is the best option of the answer choices given that fact. If you're down to 2 and you're like, I cannot decide between B and D, they both seem like perfect options for the sentence. And rather than just guessing one, bubble in the one that's shorter. Because shorter would mean that it's using fewer words to get the same meaning across, which is a style of English that we all support, and the SAT supports too. So that is a really crucial thing for the grammar section. The other thing I would want you to get used to is the problem of, they call it dangling modifiers in English class. If your teacher's never covered it, maybe you could say like, hey, I've got my SAT in a month. Can we, in one period do like a 20-minute dangling modifier talk? It basically just means when you have a dependent clause beginning a sentence, and it has to describe what comes right after the comma that follows it. So if I said, walking across the street, a car almost hit me, that's actually grammatically incorrect. Your brain processed that to understand that I was walking across the street and then the car almost hit me. But grammatically, if you say walking across the street, it describes what comes right after, which is the car in that case. So the car isn't walking across the street, so that's actually grammatically incorrect. This is something that in the 50s and 60s, they used to like pound away at in school, and they would rap you with a ruler if you got it wrong. And so your parents are probably better at this than you are, because grammar is not nearly as strictly instructed anymore. But that is one you want to get really comfortable with, because it is all over the SAT and the ACT. You'll see it multiple times in every grammar section that you do.
Thank you. And I know there's the one benefit of the writing section is not everything is tested, so kids can actually kind of find a list online anywhere about what the most common topics are and make sure you know those rules, and then find the concise answer that's grammatically correct. Thank you so much for your advice.